Chapter 21. Soe's Pav. I am Soe, I declared, my voice sharp and unwavering as my piercing gaze swept across the room. I have come to discuss the Orc Lord's invasion. I paused, letting my words settle in the heavy silence. I observed their reactions, my honed instincts analyzing every twitch, every breath. My presence alone had shifted the atmosphere, tension thickening like a coiled snake ready to strike. Our master's representative, our leader, wishes to meet with your leader, I continued, my voice calm yet firm, watching for any sign of aggression. A moment stretched into eternity before a young figure, no older than 12, locked eyes with me. He was human-like, but his presence carried a weight beyond his years. Wild white hair framed his youthful face, and two horns, one red, one black, protruded from his head. Crimson irises gleamed ominously against dark sclera, a sharp contrast that sent a ripple of unease through the room. He scrutinized me with a stare that betrayed no fear. I'm the leader. My name is Riken Tempest. What business do you have with me? He asked, his voice mirroring my own unwavering tone. I studied him closely. He resembled a Kijin, but something about him felt different. The 6 figures standing beside and behind him, however, were unmistakably Kijins. Are they from the ogre village? I pondered silently. I let the silence stretch before I responded. No serious business. Calm yourselves. There is no need to be tense. I am merely a messenger here to deliver my leader's message. My eyes flickered toward the Kijins, gauging their reactions. But before that, are you from the ogre village? Riken's expression remained unreadable. I'm not an ogre or a Kijin, but they are, he stated, motioning towards his 6 companions. I do not trust you yet, so I can't tell you my race. I hope you understand. I gave a slow nod. No need to apologize, I understand your caution. However, I am relieved to see that some from the ogre village have survived. Before I could continue, one of the Kijins stepped forward, his expression severe yet laced with an emotion he failed to conceal hope. What do you mean by, fellow ogre? His voice was edged with restrained urgency. I'd like to know more. Who are you? Are there more survivors? Are you one of them? I met his gaze. Ah, I should have introduced myself first. I inclined my head. I am one of the ogre survivors from the Orc Lord's invasion. Riken-sama bestowed upon me the name Kokuyu, and now I have evolved into a Kijin. There are 6 of us, including me. I could feel the weight of their silent stares, the unspoken emotions behind them: grief, longing, suspicion. I turned back to Riken. As I said before, I'm Soe. I am only a messenger here to deliver our leader's message. My parents were from the ogre village, though I was not born there. I cannot go into detail now, but our leader wishes to meet you to discuss the Orc Lord's invasion. My gaze remained steady as I spoke. Riken nodded after a moment of deliberation. Very well. When will he arrive? Tomorrow, I stated simply before vanishing into the shadows. Riken's Pav. The moment the messenger disappeared, silence swallowed the room. Tension lingered like an oppressive storm cloud, pressing against my chest. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My fingers curled slightly, still feeling the residual weight of Soe's presence. That was something else, I muttered under my breath. Who the hell was he? Just a messenger. My foot. That man's presence alone was enough to suffocate the air in the room. He is as strong as me, if not stronger, yet he concealed his aura like it was nothing. I swallowed, my mind racing through possibilities. Akari, ever the loyal one, wrapped her arms around me from behind. I'm sure that Riken-sama will be fine, she murmured softly, her warmth grounding me. The others nodded in silent agreement, but I wasn't so sure. Fine, maybe, but if I had to fight him in a straight battle, could I win? The doubt gnawed at me, an unfamiliar feeling that I despised. My gaze drifted to Trainee, who hadn't spoken a single word since Soe arrived. Her usually serene face was unreadable, but her tension was evident. Hey, Trainee, I called, breaking the silence. Are you okay? She blinked, as if shaken from deep thought. Ah, sorry. Yes, I'm okay, she replied quickly, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. I'm just a little worried. About that messenger? I asked. She nodded slowly. Trainee's Pav. Something was off. It wasn't just the messenger himself, it was the presence that loomed behind him, something lurking in the unseen shadows. I could feel it, a subtle yet undeniable force observing from beyond the veil. It was unsettling. Veldora-sama had warned me about the Void Dragon's subordinates, how they included Kijins and Onis among their ranks. He had explicitly told me not to offend them should I ever encounter them. If Soe was one of them, then we had to tread carefully. I clenched my hands together, trying to steady my nerves. If he is part of the Void Dragon's forces, then what does that mean for us? Does his leader seek an alliance? Or are we simply obstacles in their path? The uncertainty clawed at me. For now, all I could do was hope that whatever came next wouldn't lead us into ruin. The day after, Riken's Pav. The air in the meeting hall was thick with anticipation. My subordinates 6 Kijin, Gobu Ryo, and Trainee stood behind me, their gazes sharp and their bodies tense. Across from me sat a man a presence so overwhelming that it made even the most hardened warriors hesitate. Benimaru. His eyes held an amusement that barely masked the depth of his power. He looked relaxed, but I wasn't fooled. This was not someone to underestimate. So, Benimaru spoke, his voice carrying an odd mix of warmth and authority. "You're Riken Tempest." I nodded. "And you are the leader Soe spoke of." A smirk touched his lips. "That would be me." Silence stretched between us, a heavy, almost suffocating silence. I leaned forward, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Let's not waste time. You wish to discuss the Orc Lord's invasion? Then speak." Benimaru's gaze sharpened, the air around him shifting subtly. It was nearly imperceptible, but I felt it an overwhelming pressure, a quiet warning. This was a man who could kill without hesitation if given the reason. I sat with folded hands and closed eyes, my mind racing as I processed everything we had discussed. According to Benimaru, his parents had once been the head chief of the ogre village but had left to follow his current master. Now, he and his people sought revenge against the orcs, a goal that aligned with ours. It was a good deal. They were strong Soe, Benimaru, and the other 2 Kijin. But something about them still felt shrouded in secrecy. Trainee, in particular, had been pale since the moment Benimaru introduced himself. And the most unsettling realization? He was not even the highest ranking or strongest among his master's subordinates. That revelation alone sent chills down my spine. As I was lost in thought, Akari's voice cut through the room. "So you leave us, and now that you're in trouble and fear the orcs' army, you come back to us for help. Is your master scared now of that orc lord?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. A Kijin standing behind Benimaru took a step forward, her aura flaring with barely contained fury. "Shut the hell up or I will kill you." The female Kijin Xian, I think, roared, her voice dripping with raw, murderous intent. Internally, I panicked. This was bad, very bad. I could see Trainee also struggling to maintain her composure, but we couldn't afford to show fear. I opened my mouth to intervene, but Benimaru's voice sliced through the tension like a blade. "That's enough, Xian." She immediately stepped back, though her glare remained locked onto Akari. Benimaru turned back to us, his expression unreadable. "As I said before, we are here because of our common enemy. That is all. We are not here to serve you, nor are we obligated to help you. I advise you to choose your words carefully." His face darkened, his golden red eyes gleaming with a deadly promise. "This is your first and last warning, do not insult our king." He let those words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken consequences. "Or I will kill you." A chill ran down my spine. His words were not a threat. They were a statement of fact. Then, as if a switch had flipped, his expression returned to its usual composed state. "Our king was kind enough to accept our selfish request and send us here. I could easily report back that there are no survivors left." He exhaled as if he were disappointed. "Since this is your first time making such a mistake, I'll let it slide." I swallowed hard. What the hell was that? That aura. He was terrifying. "Wait," he said. "King. Does that mean there's a kingdom of monsters?" I hadn't even asked where they lived or how many forces they had. I forced myself to regain control of my thoughts and finally spoke. "I apologize for my subordinate's rude comment," I said, throwing a pointed look at Akari. I then turned back to Benimaru. "I would like to know how many of your forces will be joining the battle and where they will be coming from." Benimaru leaned back slightly, his smirk returning. "There is no army, only 4 of us." I stared at him, dumbfounded. The word slipped from my mouth before I could stop it. Oh my god, is he joking? No, he's serious. He's completely serious. Just 4 of them against 400,000 orcs. Benimaru folded his arms. "So, can we start strategizing about who will face whom?" Ha ha ha, I could only laugh awkwardly in my head. A few days after the meeting with Benimaru. At the marshlands, Lake Shisu, a vast body of water at the heart of the Jura forest, was surrounded by a sprawling network of marshlands. This natural fortress served as the home and stronghold of the lizardmen, a proud and battle-hardened race. The area was dotted with caves and natural fortifications, offering a strategic advantage against any invaders. Deep within the central cavern, inside the throne chamber, the lizardman chief sat upon his stone throne, his scaled brow furrowed with the weight of leadership. Elders and high-ranking warriors lined the chamber, their eyes flickering with the torchlight as they discussed the growing tension in the region. Suddenly, a scout burst into the room, panting from exertion. "Chief," he called out urgently, bowing before speaking. "Orc forces have been spotted nearby, advancing toward Lake Shisu." The chamber fell into a hush. The chief leaned forward, his green eyes narrowing. "Orcs? Are you certain?" "Yes, my lord," the scout affirmed with conviction. "A vast army, numbering over 400,000, is marching toward our lands." Gasps and murmurs of disbelief rippled through the elders. One of them, an aged warrior with faded scales, banged his fist against the armrest of his seat. "Preposterous. No orc horde in history has ever been so large." Another spy stepped forward, bowing low. "By my very life, my lord, I swear this information is true." The chief exhaled slowly, his mind racing. 400,000, such numbers should be impossible. Orcs are not an intelligent or organized race. How could they amass such an army? An elder murmured, his voice trembling with realization. Unless an orc lord has appeared among them." A heavy silence fell upon the room. The name itself carried weight. An orc lord and evolved and intelligent leader could command orcs with terrifying efficiency, granting them unnatural strength and unity. Such an enemy would be beyond their means to defeat alone. The chief steeled his expression, unwilling to show weakness. "Summon my son at once." Moments later, a tall and well-built lizardman with bright green scales strode into the chamber. He wore brown armor crafted from the strongest marshland materials, signifying his rank and status. His eyes gleamed with confidence, even arrogance. "Father, you called." "Yes, my son, I have an important mission for you," the chief said, his voice steady. "Father, please call me by my name." "I am Gabaru," the younger lizardman declared, puffing out his chest. The chief sighed. "We don't have time for such matters. The orcs are advancing on our territory. You must seek aid from the goblins." Gabaru scoffed. "Orcs? Bah, they are mere pigs. We can crush them easily." "No," the chief countered sharply. "We need backup. Now go." Grudgingly, Gabaru nodded and left with a small entourage, setting off for the goblin villages. Goblin village, Riken's Pav. Several days had passed since I integrated the Kijins into my ranks and held my meeting with Benimaru. Anticipating the coming storm, I had sent Sasaki and his team to gather intelligence on the orcs and any Majins possibly involved. As I was deep in thought in my quarters, Sasaki entered briskly. "Riken-sama, I bring urgent news." "Go ahead," I said, setting aside the wooden kima piece I had been absent-mindedly rolling between my fingers. "A lizardman envoy has arrived." A lizardman, that could only mean one thing: the orcs. "All right, bring them to the meeting chamber and gather the others." A short while later, I sat at the head of a long wooden table, surrounded by my trusted allies Kokuyu, Hamiko, Akari, Sasaki, Kojira, Kenzan, Gobu Ryo, and several hobgoblins, as well as Kaijin and his brothers. A lizard-man clad in ornate armor stepped forward, his posture stiff with arrogance. "So, you are their master?" he asked with a sneer. "Yes. State your business," I replied evenly, already unimpressed by his demeanor. The lizard-man puffed out his chest. "I am Gabaru, the next chief of the lizardmen. You have all been deceived by a mere human child. I will defeat him and lead you to glory. You may as well submit to me now." I raised an eyebrow. This idiot, does he not realize what he's saying? Even with my modified appearance, I still bore the small horns of a Kijin. "Serve you," I repeated, incredulously. "What nonsense are you spouting, lizard?" Kokuyu snarled. "You dare call us weak?" He was already rising from his seat, fists clenched. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. This was a waste of time. With a flick of my wrist, I hurled the wooden kima piece at him. I barely used any strength, yet it struck him squarely between the eyes, knocking him out cold. The room fell silent. "Take him back," I ordered his subordinates. "Tell your chief to send someone reasonable if he truly wants an alliance." Gabiru's dazed form was dragged away. Sasaki smirked. "Shall I deliver a proper message to the chief?" I nodded. "Go to the lizardmen chief. Offer him an alliance. We need to be prepared for what's coming." "Understood," Sasaki said, vanishing into the night. Sometime later, deep in the forest. Gabiru-sama, a lizard man urgently shook his leader's shoulder, trying to wake him up. Gabiru groaned, his eyes fluttering open. Where am I? What happened? Gabiru-sama, you were struck unconscious by a wooden projectile thrown by the goblin village leader. Gabiru shot up, indignation flashing across his face. I was hit. Ha, that was unexpected. Otherwise, I would have easily defeated him. Of course, Gabiru-sama cannot be bested by a mere human. He is the next great lizardman chief. One of his loyal subordinates declared. Yes, Gabiru-sama is unmatched. Gabiru. 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 The chants of his devoted followers echoed through the forest, their admiration undeterred. Smirking, Gabiru dusted himself off. All right, enough resting. Let's return to our village. Our people await my triumphant return. Marshlands, the lizardmen stronghold. Seated upon his throne, the lizardmen chief was lost in thought, his scaled hands gripping the armrests tightly. His worries revolved around the ominous reports of the Orc Lord and the growing threat of the Orcish horde. He could feel the weight of leadership pressing down on him. Then, the chamber doors burst open as a soldier rushed in. Chief, an intruder has entered our territory. He seeks an audience with you. Chief's Pav, an intruder. In these times, I furrowed my brow but remained composed. Let him in. Moments later, an overwhelming presence filled the chamber. A powerful aura, dangerous yet controlled, washed over me. My warriors instinctively gripped their weapons, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Calm yourselves, I ordered, my gaze fixed on the figure approaching. A lone monster strode into the throne room, his dark skin and striking blue hair catching my eye. He exuded an air of quiet dominance, a silent promise of strength beyond reckoning. Even if I were to command hundreds of my elite warriors, I doubt we could take him down. We must tread carefully. The stranger inclined his head slightly, a show of courtesy but not submission. My apologies. I cannot afford to waste time on formalities. I narrowed my eyes. Who are you, Sasaki? I am a messenger. A messenger. I examined him closely. From your aura, you seem to be an ogre. His expression remained unreadable. I was once an ogre. Now, I am a Kijin. I inhaled sharply. Kijins, those who have ascended from ogres to a higher existence. They are said to be as legendary as the Orc Lord himself. Sasaki wasted no time. My master wishes to form an alliance with you and has sent me to make the necessary arrangements. His master. If this man alone possessed such power, then his leader must be. Your master, you say? He must be afraid of the orcs and seeks our help, one of my guards scoffed. A thin white thread shot out, wrapping around the foolish warrior's throat in an instant. My breath hitched as I recognized it, not a simple rope, but something more sinister. A blink later, Sasaki held the thread taut, his expression unchanged. Please forgive the rudeness of my subordinate. I quickly interjected, raising my hands in an attempt to de-escalate. I would like to pursue this alliance. Had I not spoken in time, he would have executed my man without hesitation. Sasaki studied me for a moment before retracting his thread. I accept your apology, but I will not tolerate disrespect toward my master. The tension in the room lingered, but I exhaled in relief. He had made his stance clear. We will arrive in 5 days. Until then, do not advance. Hold your ground. He then revealed the Dryad's request and the looming threat of the Orc Lord. If the Dryads themselves sought his master's aid, then this master must be an extraordinary being. A glimmer of hope flickered within me. Without another word, Sasaki vanished. I turned to my warriors. Where is Gabiru? Has he returned yet? Not yet, my chief. I see. 3 days later, a guard entered the throne room. Gabiru-sama has returned, my lord. I nodded. Summon him. Moments later, Gabiru strode into the chamber, his usual overconfidence evident in his posture. I have returned, my lord, he announced with a grin. Gabiru, were you successful in gathering goblin forces? Yes. I have secured 7,000 goblins. They stand ready for our command. Gabiru boasted. I rubbed my chin. I see. Hopefully, they will prove useful. Gabiru leaned forward eagerly. Are we preparing for battle? No, not yet. We have received an invitation for an alliance. They will arrive in 2 days. Until then, we wait. Gabiru scowled. My chief, if I take the lead, we can crush these pigs in a single charge. Give the order, and I will strike. No, I said firmly. We wait. Gabiru's expression darkened. Chief, Father, you must see reason. Your advanced age clouds your judgment. I narrowed my eyes. What? The air shifted as my guards tensed. Sir Gabiru, what are you suggesting? Before I could react, Gabiru's followers surrounded my throne, weapons drawn. The realization struck me like a thunderbolt. A coup. Gabiru raised a hand. Take them, Gabiru. You do not understand the threat the Orc Lord poses. I shouted, my voice laced with desperation. He merely smirked. Take them all to the dungeons. We will fight the orcs on our terms, here in the marshlands. His subordinates saluted. Hi. I watched in silent horror as my own people were taken into custody. My heart pounded with frustration and sorrow. Gabiru turned to me with a self-assured grin. Do not worry, father. I will free you after I lead our people to victory. I could only stare as my son sealed our fate, blind to the storm that loomed on the horizon. Third Pav. A lone figure hovered above the battlefield, his presence veiled by the twilight sky. A devilish grin stretched across his concealed face, obscured by a pointy white mask. Dressed in an immaculate white suit, complete with a top hat, he exuded an aura of eerie elegance. This was Gelmund, a higher Majin and a devoted subordinate of Demon Lord Clayman. His piercing gaze fixated on the orcish army advancing toward the Lizardmen's marshland. Gelmund's third Pav, Kekaki, that foolish Gabiru. His arrogance has sealed the fate of his entire race. Soon, the Lizardmen will be nothing more than fodder for the Orc Lord. A cruel chuckle escaped his lips as he relished the unfolding chaos. The Jura forest will be consumed in flames of war, and the birth of a new demon lord shall come to pass. And I will be the mastermind behind it all. The one who orchestrated this grand event, the one who will bask in Clayman-sama's praise. His eyes glowed with malevolent glee as he whispered the command, Orcs, now move forward and devour every last one of them. With that decree, the monstrous horde surged forth, a tidal wave of destruction descending upon the unsuspecting lizardmen. Raiken's Pav. It had been 3 days since I sent Sasaki to offer an alliance to the lizardmen. Realistically, they had no other choice but to accept. If they refused, they would have been annihilated. Of course, I wouldn't have let that happen, but they didn't know that. Today, we were making our way toward the lizardmen's territory for the official meeting with their chieftain. Accompanying me were Kokuyu, Hamiko, Akari, Sasaki, Kojira, Gobu Ryo, Ryuga, and a few goblin riders, including Gobu Ryo's son, and Gobito, as well as Benimaru and his team. We are riding on direwolves. Benimaru and his team, however, had a different means of transport. They rode on wyverns. When I first saw them soaring through the skies atop those beasts, I was utterly dumbfounded. They are riding on wyverns. I had blurted out in disbelief when I first saw them. Now, as we rode our direwolves through the dense forest, I explained to Benimaru the terms of our alliance with the lizardmen. Before we could reach our destination, I received a sudden thought communication from Soe. What is it, Soe? While scouting the area, I came across a battle. 5 orcs against a lizardman. Shall I intervene? I have already spoken with Benimaru about it. You did form an alliance with them, correct? Yes, we have an alliance. That means we should assist them. But can you handle it alone? Easily. Then they're all yours. After severing the connection, I turned to address the rest of my group. Everyone, pick up the pace. We're heading to Soe's location. The dire wolves beneath us accelerated, their powerful legs propelling us through the wilderness. However, upon arrival, we were met with a gruesome sight. The battlefield was a slaughterhouse. Severed orc limbs were scattered across the ground, their corpses reduced to mangled piles of flesh. Pools of blood dyed the earth a deep crimson. Kokuyu scoffed, stepping over a still twitching orc. Ha, he didn't leave any fun for us. Akari sighed in disappointment. A shame. Benimaru smirked. Don't be too upset, this was just a small skirmish. Shion chimed in, grinning. Exactly, we still have the main force to look forward to. These guys, they were excited about the impending battle. Then again, so was I. I shifted my gaze to Soe, who was holding an injured female lizardman. Blood trickled from a deep gash in her side. Sasaki stepped forward, eyes narrowing. She is one of the lizardmen chieftain's guards. Without hesitation, I retrieved a high-grade healing potion and applied it to her wound. Within seconds, her injury closed, and the blood that had coated her scales vanished. Her eyes fluttered open, and in an instant, she bolted upright, looking around frantically. How am I alive? I should be dead. Who are you? I met her gaze. I am Raiken Tempest. The moment she heard my name, realization dawned on her. Her body trembled, and suddenly, she dropped to her knees, prostrating before me. Lord Riken, please, I beg of you. Save my people. My foolish brother has overthrown our father and taken control. He has led our warriors straight into the path of the orc army. Please, I beg you, save my people and my father. A wave of irritation surged through me. That idiot Gabiru, he had no idea what he had done. He was leading his people straight to their deaths. Before I could respond, Benimaru stepped forward, his voice firm. Riken Dono, we need to act fast. If we delay any longer, the situation will spiral out of control. We must march to the battlefield immediately. As for her father and the others, Soe, you handle the rescue operation and join us when you're done. The female lizardman practically sobbed in relief. Thank you so much. Benimaru, this guy, did he really just take over my role? Well, not like I was going to refuse her plea anyway. Understood, Benimaru. At that moment, Soe vanished into the shadows, taking the lizardwoman with him. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders. Alright, you all heard him. Time to move out. We're going to save that fool Gabiru. Yes, Riken-sama. With that, we mounted our direwolves and took off, the scent of battle growing stronger in the air. War was upon us. The battlefield was nothing short of a nightmare. The once still marshland had transformed into a chaotic slaughterhouse where the air reeked of blood, mud, and death. The ground trembled beneath the heavy footfalls of thousands of orcs, their grotesque figures looming over the lizardmen like an unstoppable tide of destruction. The cries of the fallen and the clash of steel filled the air, a grim symphony of war. Gabiru stood in the center of it all, gripping his spear tightly. His eyes darted across the battlefield, taking in the horror that unfolded around him. His once proud lizardmen warriors, filled with the confidence of an easy victory, were now being torn apart, their flesh devoured by the insatiable orc horde. The goblin reinforcements, who had fought bravely in ambushes, were being overrun, their small stature no match for the monstrous strength of their foes. How did it come to this? Gabiru thought, his mind racing. We had the advantage. We were stronger, faster. We should have been victorious. And yet, the orcs adapted. Their gruesome feasting granted them the traits of the lizardmen. Their movements became sharper, their speed increased, and their once sluggish and clumsy steps became precise and deadly. The marsh that should have hindered them now became their ally, allowing them to close in on the outnumbered and exhausted lizardmen with terrifying ease. Gabiru felt his stomach twist as he saw another one of his warriors fall. The poor lizardman screamed, reaching out desperately for help as he was dragged beneath the muddy waters by 3 orcs. His voice cut off into sickening gurgles before silence took him. Damn it, I should have listened to my father. I should have been more careful. Gabiru cursed himself, but there was no time for regret. He had to act now, or the lizardmen race would be wiped from existence. It was at that moment that a colossal figure emerged from the ranks of the orcs, its armor gleaming a dark, ominous black. The sheer weight of its presence sent a shiver down Gabiru's spine. He instinctively knew this was no ordinary orc. His aura, it's suffocating. Gabiru clenched his teeth, forcing himself to stand firm. Could this be the Orc Lord? He had barely spoken when the figure's deep, resonant voice cut through the battlefield's noise. I am not the Lord. Gabiru's eyes widened in shock. Excuse me. The orc's massive head tilted slightly, as if he found the question amusing. I am but a lieutenant general of the Orc Lord's army. Compared to our Lord, my power is far inferior. I am not even close to an orc general. Gabiru's heart pounded against his ribs. His hands felt clammy against the shaft of his spear. If this monstrous being, radiating such an overwhelming presence, was merely a lieutenant general, then what kind of nightmare would the Orc Lord himself be? No, I can't let fear take hold of me. If I falter, my people will have no one left to lead them. Gabiru thought, shaking his head. He took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage left in him. He tightened his grip on his spear and pointed it at the armored behemoth before him. Well then, Orc Lieutenant General, I challenge you to a duel. A deep rumbling chuckle escaped from the orc's throat. His glowing yellow eyes locked onto Gabiru with a mixture of amusement and anticipation. Ho, you wish to challenge me? Very well, I shall oblige. But be warned, lizard, you will find no mercy in my blade. As the orc drew his massive cleaver from his back, the weight of reality set in. The battle was no longer just about pride, it was a desperate struggle for survival. The fate of the lizardmen, of Gabiru's people, now rested on the edge of his spear. And he could not afford to lose. Gabiru gritted his teeth, his muscles tensing as he lunged forward, spear aimed directly at the Orc Lieutenant General's chest. He put all his weight into the strike, determined to end this battle in a single, decisive blow. But just as the tip of his spear was about to pierce through the Orc's armor. Clang! The Orc's massive battle axe came down in a blur of motion, intercepting Gabiru's attack with such overwhelming force that it sent the lizard man staggering backward. He lost his footing, slipping in the mud, barely keeping his balance. Before he could react, the Orc was already upon him. A storm of brutal strikes rained down. Each swing of the Orc's axe carved through the air with bone-shattering power. Gabiru dodged desperately, weaving through the deadly arcs of metal, but each movement drained more and more of his stamina. His breaths became ragged, his body ached from the sheer force of narrowly evading death. Damn it, he's fast for his size. I need to find an opening or I'll be finished. Gabiru thought, sweat dripping from his brow. Every strike forced him further into a defensive retreat. Then a tiny break in the Orc's relentless assault. Gabiru's eyes widened. Now, he pushed off the ground, trying to leap away, but... Chaos Eater! The Orc roared. Dark tendrils, writhing with a sickly aura, erupted from the Orc's body. The spectral limbs twisted unnaturally, forming grotesque, fanged mouths that snapped hungrily at the air. The ground where they struck corroded instantly, turning to black sludge. Gabiru barely twisted out of the way as one of the tendrils lashed out, missing his arm by mere inches. A second later, the spot he had just been standing in dissolved into nothing. One touch from those, and I'm dead. The tendrils lunged again, forcing Gabiru into a frantic sprint. He slashed at them mid-dodge, severing a few of the grotesque limbs, but more kept sprouting, as if the Orc's aura itself was alive. Are you trying to eat me? Gabiru shouted in frustration, his heart hammering in his chest. But he refused to give in. His grip tightened on his spear. His mind honed in on a singular thought: ignore the tendrils. Kill the Orc. Gabiru dashed straight toward his opponent, cutting down the writhing limbs like a man possessed. His every muscle screamed in protest, but he pressed on, dodging and slashing, forging a path through the death trap. The Orc saw him coming and raised his battle axe. Gabiru suddenly leapt high into the air, twisting his body mid-flight. He aimed his spear downward, poised to drive it through the Orc's skull. Clang! His spear was met with an iron shield at the last second. Gabiru's eyes widened in shock as the Orc barely managed to block, deflecting him with sheer brute strength. He was thrown off balance. The Orc wasted no time, swinging his axe in two massive, downward arcs. Clang! Chong! Gabiru barely managed to parry the first strike, but the sheer force knocked him off his feet. The second attack followed immediately after, and before he knew it, he was lying on the ground disarmed, breathless. Panic surged through him. The Orc sneered down at him, eyes filled with contempt. A lizard man in his natural state crawling in the dirt. How pathetic. Now, die! The battle axe came down. Clang! Another weapon blocked the attack, sending sparks flying. Gabiru gasped, looking up. A stout, green-skinned figure stood in front of him, his short sword locked against the Orc's massive axe. The goblin warrior's muscles bulged under the strain, his feet sinking slightly into the mud, but he held firm. Who are you? Gabiru asked, still reeling from his near-death experience. A voice came from his left. That is Gobito. He is the leader of the goblin riders. Gabiru turned his head and saw two massive direwolves standing beside him. Their fur was sleek, their eyes sharp, filled with intelligence and battle-hardened wisdom. One of them, a particularly imposing wolf, stepped forward. I am Ryuga, the direwolf stated. We are loyal followers of Lord Riken. Gabiru's eyes narrowed. That human, Ryuga growled, his presence suddenly becoming suffocating. Lord Riken is not a mere human, you foolish lizard. Gabiru shivered under the sheer intensity of his gaze. The Orc, Lieutenant laughed. Never heard of him. If he dares oppose me, he will perish just like the rest of you. Ryuga bared his fangs. You think we are weak? Fine then, let's prove you wrong. Then he howled. The sound was unlike anything heard before, deep, reverberating through the battlefield, shaking the very air itself. A suffocating aura spread outward like an unstoppable storm. Above the battlefield, a pair of crimson eyes gleamed in the darkness. A figure hovered there, bat-like wings outstretched, gazing down at the battle below. A human-like form, no more than 12 years old in appearance, with wild white hair, sharp twin horns, one red, one black, and dark sclera framing his glowing red pupils. Riken watched the battle unfold with keen interest. Whoa, what skill is this? This is the individual Ryuga's wide-range skill, Death Storm. Raikon smirked. So he's gotten stronger. Where are the others? His gaze flickered across the battlefield. In an instant, he spotted multiple blackish-purple domes of flame erupting, consuming countless orcs in a matter of seconds. Benimaru. Further away, he saw another figure, Kokuyu, standing amidst a horde of orcs. His Nodashi crackled with crimson lightning, his unique skill Thunder manifesting in devastating arcs. One swing, boom, an entire squadron of orcs vanished, leaving behind only scorched earth. Akari was nearby, her Odachi coated in blood, her movements wild and primal, tearing through enemies like a beast unleashed. Raikon's smirk widened. My allies are annihilating these orcs. If this keeps up, the entire army will be wiped out. I need to find the Orc Lord before it's too late. He scanned the battlefield one last time and found him. A towering figure clad in grotesque golden armor, standing amidst the chaos, radiating an aura of pure malice. There you are. Just as Raikon was about to make his move, unknown presences emerged on the battlefield, their oppressive auras rolling out like a suffocating wave of malice and raw power. The moment they appeared, the atmosphere itself seemed to darken, as if the world recognized the threat they posed. These were no ordinary foes, these were orc generals, monstrous warriors of terrifying might. Their crimson eyes gleamed with an unsettling intelligence, and their massive weapons dripped with the blood of the fallen. 4 of them stood at the forefront, exuding an aura of absolute dominance, while 7 orc lieutenant generals began marching behind them with deadly intent. There should have been 8 lieutenant generals, but Ryuga had slain one before their arrival. Even so, their presence alone made the battlefield tremble with dread. Raikon's heart pounded in his chest. A cold sweat trickled down his back as he observed the sheer magnitude of the threat before him. His instincts screamed at him that this was bad, very, very bad. Clenching his fists, he reached out to everyone using thought communication, his mind racing through possible strategies even as he spoke. Everyone, the situation has become dire. Those orc generals, they are bad news. He warned, forcing himself to maintain composure despite the gnawing anxiety creeping into his voice. These weren't enemies that could be taken lightly. If even one of them was allowed to rampage unchecked, countless lives would be lost. Before he could continue, a familiar voice cut in with a calm assurance that steadied his nerves. The rescue operation is complete, and I have joined the battlefield. Soe reported, his voice devoid of any panic, as if the chaos around them was nothing more than another task to be handled. Raikon exhaled in relief. That's good, he replied before returning his focus to the looming crisis. His mind raced, processing their dwindling options. Then, Benimaru's commanding tone resonated through their shared link, filled with unwavering confidence. Raikon Dono, Matim Shion, Soe, Hakuro, and I will handle the orc generals. You and your subordinates should take care of the lieutenant generals, he declared. Raikon hesitated for only a fraction of a second. The weight of the decision bore down on him like an iron vice. The orc generals were on a different level entirely. Was it truly wise to let Benimaru and his team engage them alone? Yet, there was no alternative. If the lieutenant generals weren't stopped, they would wreak havoc among their forces. Okay, there's no time to waste. We will proceed with the plan as discussed. Once you've finished off the generals and the lieutenant generals, head for the Orc Lord immediately. I will do the same, Raikon commanded, his voice firm, masking the trepidation bubbling beneath the surface. A chorus of acknowledgements followed, their determination cutting through the tension. Hi, came the resolute response, and with that, the thought communication ended. As silence returned to his own mind, Raikon inhaled deeply, trying to suppress the growing unease gnawing at him. He cast his gaze over the battlefield, the distant sounds of battle a constant reminder that time was slipping through their fingers. His grip on his sword tightened. The battlefield had become a grotesque canvas of war. Blood soaked the marshlands, the foul stench of death thick in the air, mingling with the acrid scent of burning flesh. Torn limbs, shattered weapons, and the unholy cries of the dying painted a scene of pure carnage. The sun, now a dying ember in the sky, cast long shadows over the gruesome spectacle, flickering over the bodies that lay in twisted, unnatural angles. Raikon floated above the battlefield, his crimson eyes scanning the chaos below. His expression was cold, calculating. He had seen death before, but the sheer scale of destruction here was unsettling even to him. This war had dragged on long enough. It was time to end it. His gaze locked onto the 7 remaining orc lieutenant generals, each a towering monstrosity of muscle and malevolent energy. Their grotesque forms, enhanced by the insatiable hunger of starved pulsed with dark, chaotic auras. Their eyes, deep pits of endless hunger, fixated on Riken and his allies. The 7 lieutenants moved like a pack of apex predators, spreading out to surround Kokuyu, Akari, Sasaki, and Kojira. 3 of the beasts broke off, their gaits deliberate, predatory, as they advanced toward him, their eyes locked onto Riken himself. The ground trembled beneath their steps, each footfall sending waves through the blood-soaked mud. The largest of them, clad in jagged black armor etched with ominous runes, sneered. "A mere whelp dares to stand against us." The orc's voice was like grinding stone, thick with contempt. "Your arrogance will be your undoing." Riken sighed, his fingers flexing. 3 of you against me." His lips curled into a smirk. "I'm flattered." The orcs moved at once. No hesitation, no wasted motion. One wielded a cleaver the size of a man, another brandished twin serrated axes, and the leader carried a colossal mace dripping with viscera. Their attacks came in a blur of destruction. The cleaver screamed through the air where Riken had been standing, carving deep into the earth with such force that it sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. The twin axes followed, spinning with unnatural speed, meant to cleave him apart from opposite angles. But Riken was already moving. His body blurred, his form slipping between their strikes as though he were made of mist. "Too slow," he murmured, appearing behind them. With a flick of his wrist, black flame thunder crackled to life, twisting around his hand like a living entity, surging with raw, devastating energy. He drove his fist into the nearest orc's back. The creature bellowed in agony as the flame thunder exploded on impact, tearing through its flesh and muscle, leaving a blackened crater where its spine should have been. But before Riken could follow up, the orc's body quivered and the wound began to knit itself back together, sinew reconnecting, flesh reforming with horrifying speed. TCH. Magic resistance and regeneration. Riken's sharp crimson eyes narrowed. Annoying. The moment's distraction cost him. The leader's mace came down like a meteor, gravity-enhanced, shattering the air with sheer force. Riken barely had time to twist away before the impact struck the ground, creating a deafening explosion that sent jagged rock and bloodied dirt flying in all directions. The shockwave hit him like a hammer, sending him skidding backward. He clicked his tongue. "All right, let's see how long you bastards can keep up." With a single thought, he activated Haki, an overwhelming pressure crashing down upon the battlefield like a tidal wave. The weaker orcs in the distance collapsed, their bodies convulsing as their minds buckled under the sheer force of his will. Even the lieutenant generals flinched, their movements slowing for the briefest of moments. Riken seized the opportunity. He vanished, reappearing midair above them. His hands surged with explosive heat as he activated explosive flames, compressing raw power into the space between his palms before releasing it in a concentrated blast downward. The eruption consumed the orcs in an inferno of black and crimson, the fire screaming as it devoured everything in its path. But even through the blaze, Riken saw them move. The lead orc burst from the firestorm, his armor glowing red-hot but otherwise unharmed. His face twisted into a maniacal grin as he swung his mace in a sweeping arc. The attack carried enough force to pulverize a fortress. Riken raised his arm, activating ranged barrier just in time to intercept the strike. The barrier held for a fraction of a second before shattering under the overwhelming power. The impact sent Riken hurtling through the battlefield, smashing through the ruined remains of fallen warriors and broken siege weapons. The orcs were closing in again, relentless, their eyes glowing with monstrous hunger. "All right, enough playing around." His voice was quiet, deadly. He activated steel strength, his muscles coiling with explosive power. His body blurred as he reappeared directly before the leader, his fist driving forward. The orc barely had time to react before Riken's punch connected with his gut, sending the creature's massive frame careening through the air. The force of the blow created a shockwave that split the ground open beneath them. The remaining 2 lieutenants roared and charged, but Riken was ready. His hands moved in a blur, conjuring black flame thunder once more. He wove between their attacks, his strikes precise, devastating. One of the orcs lost an arm, another had his face melted into a charred ruin. And yet they still regenerated. "Let's see you regenerate from this," Riken growled, activating Devourer. A vortex of pure consumption opened around him, the air warping as reality bent to his will. The wounded orc screamed as his body was pulled apart, devoured. The second thrashed, but it was futile. His flesh disintegrated, absorbed into Riken's ever-hungry stomach. The leader, however, still stood. He panted, bloodied but grinning, his eyes wild. "You are strong," he admitted. But the Orc Lord is stronger. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield was a cacophony of clashing steel, war cries, and the sickening squelch of flesh being torn apart. Blood soaked the ground, mingling with the churned-up dirt, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of death. Amidst the chaos, Kokuyu, Akari, Sasaki, and Kojiro faced the remaining 4 Orc lieutenant generals. Kokuyu stood still, his nodashi humming with electricity, the crimson lightning coiling around the blade like a living entity. His opponent, a towering orc with grotesquely bulging muscles and a double-bladed axe, sneered at him, his tusks glistening with saliva. "You think that little toy can harm me, worm?" The orc grunted, his voice thick with arrogance. Kokuyu didn't answer. He simply vanished. A flash of movement, then a crack of thunder. In the blink of an eye, Kokuyu reappeared behind the orc, his blade already slicing through the beast's flesh. A wave of crimson lightning erupted from the cut, scorching muscle and bone. The orc's roar was deafening as his severed arm hit the ground with a wet thud, fingers still twitching. But before Kokuyu could press the attack, the orc's flesh writhed unnaturally. Muscle tendrils coiled and reformed, the severed limb regenerating before his eyes. "TCH," Kokuyu muttered, narrowing his eyes. This would not be a quick fight. Akari let out a primal scream as she swung her massive odachi, the steel cleaving through the air like a guillotine. Her opponent, a brute covered in jagged scars, wielding a flail with spikes as large as her head, grinned wickedly and swung his weapon with monstrous force. She barely dodged, rolling aside just as the spiked ball smashed into the ground, shattering it like glass. The shockwave sent debris flying, slashing against her skin, but she didn't falter. "You pigs just don't know when to die," she snarled, gripping her weapon tighter. Flames erupted from her sword, the heat distorting the air. The orc lunged at her, his massive arm swinging like a wrecking ball. She ducked beneath it, feeling the wind of the strike graze her scalp. Then, with an upward slash, she tore through his abdomen, splitting him open. Blood and entrails spilled onto the dirt, the acrid stench hitting her nostrils, but the orc didn't stop. "Pathetic," he roared, his organs slithering back into place as his body knitted itself back together. His flail came down again this time, she had no time to dodge. Her world spun as she was sent flying, crashing through a pile of corpses. The impact forced the air from her lungs, pain screaming through her ribs. "Damn it," she coughed, blood trickling from her lips. Her hands trembled as she planted her sword into the ground, using it to push herself up. This fight wasn't just about skill, it was about endurance. Sasaki moved like a wraith, his twin swords glowing with dark energy. His opponent, a grotesque orc wielding a hammer the size of a boulder, swung at him with the force of an avalanche. Sasaki barely dodged, the hammer missing him by inches but still creating a crater in the ground. His heart pounded. One hit, that's all it would take to end him. He weaved through the battlefield, his blades flashing like streaks of black lightning. One cut across the orc's knee, another across his wrist, severing the tendons. The beast howled in fury, stumbling forward. Too slow. With a final twist, Sasaki drove both swords into the orc's throat. Black ichor sprayed from the wound, but before he could retreat, the orc's massive hand clamped onto his shoulder, its grip like a vice. "You die with me," the orc bellowed, his ruined throat gurgling. He raised his hammer with his remaining strength. Sasaki's mind raced. If that hammer came down, he'd be reduced to paste. With a desperate roar, he twisted his blades, sawing through the orc's neck with brutal force. The head came free with a sickening snap, but even in death, the orc's grip remained. Sasaki staggered back, panting, his body aching. He shoved the headless corpse aside, his limbs burning from exertion. There was no time to rest. Kojiro faced his opponent, an orc nearly twice his size, his grotesque form covered in crude armor, wielding a claymore that gleamed with fresh blood. Kojiro stood motionless, his eyes unblinking. He exhaled slowly, emptying his mind. The orc charged, swinging his claymore with monstrous strength. The world seemed to slow. Kojiro could see the trajectory, the angle of the blade, the tiny shift in the orc's muscles before he struck. Then he moved. One step. A perfect draw. A flash of steel. The moment stretched endlessly. The orc's body tensed, still mid-swing. Then, a thin red line appeared across his torso. A heartbeat later, his upper half slid apart from his lower, blood spraying like a fountain. Kojiro sheathed his sword with a quiet click, stepping forward as the corpse collapsed behind him. Phantom draw. The battlefield was painted in gore. Kokuyu, Akari, Sasaki, and Kojiro stood among the fallen, their bodies bruised, bleeding, exhausted but victorious. Yet, as the orc generals lay in ruins, the distant sound of war drums echoed once more. The battle was far from over. Riken exhaled, shaking off the adrenaline. His eyes, sharp as a blade, locked onto the distant figure looming over the battlefield. The true enemy, the final challenge, the Orc Lord. Crimson eyes met glowing, malevolent gold. A moment of silence stretched between them. Then, with a single step, Riken advanced. The real battle was just beginning. To be continued.